when you're getting ready to retire, you're doing that big financial checklist in your head, right? But I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff to think about that's way probably even more important or at least, close to it. But it's like, what's the non-financial checklist? The things that you
Yeah.
should be doing to get ready. If to say you're 5 years from retiring, what
Yeah.
should you be doing in your personal life outside of money to make sure that you're set up for a successful retirement? You ever think about that?
We both deal with this on a regular basis with clients. So let's just kind of pick apart some of the things that we see. I personally think one of the very biggest things, especially for professionals or
Yeah.
business owners, is purpose and identity. Like,
Mm,
who are you when you strip your job title away? And especially for business owners, small business owners, because you and I know there's really a gray area where that line is between the business and you. This is who you are. This is what you do all day, every day, and what you think about. So when you strip that away, you sell the business, you execute the succession plan. Who are you the
yeah.
next day? Um, what do you think about that?
I mean, that's huge. People think about what they're retiring from all the time, but
Yeah,
they're not intentional enough with what they're retiring to. And, the way I see this play out is that, and I'm sure you've seen it too, when you don't have a clear plan for how am I going to replace 40 or 50 hours every week,
yeah,
then you either sit at home with the TV on, afraid to spend any money and just deep anxiety because you have nothing to do,
yeah,
or it's like you're repeating freshman year of college again, right? And you're just out drinking all the time, partying, spending
yeah,
all the money possible, just instant gratification. And for me, I think a lot of people need to stop checking their 401k retirement calculator on the app and start looking at how am I spending my time, my free time right now?
yeah,
What am I actually doing? Because that's going to probably be a pretty good indicator for what you're going to do when you're out of work. And
yeah,
if you're not happy with what that looks like now and that's not what you'd want to do for 40, 50 hours a week, then maybe that's a good chance to start exploring, hey, what am I retiring to? What's going to be my new purpose? And how
yeah.
am I going to be intentional with how I spend my time in retirement to make sure that I'm not full of either anxiety or just living an unsustainable party, right?
Right. And I think the person that is absolutely miserable going to work at some sort of repetitive job that also is like in love with fishing,
Yeah.
this might not be a problem. I get to
Nope.
finally stop that pain and constantly do this thing. But for most people, especially professionals and business owners, there's more going on there. They might not love every bit of their daily activities at work, but there's some things that they do love or they do have a passion for. And it might be just generically growing something or building
Yep.
something or having an effect on other people's lives. You don't have to continue your job to do that, but you need to think about what you're going to replace that with. I think having a purpose and knowing separating your identity from what you do
Yeah.
for work is super important. And that kind of brings us in. You touched on it. The next thing that's always on my list is what your daily routine and your structure is.
Sure.
So, I am on the Saturday, I go golfing and I do this thing and I do some yard work. So that I love that more than work. So that ought be what retirement's like.
Yeah.
But that's 1 day a week or 1.5 days a week. When you get seven
Yeah.
over and over and over and over again, all of a sudden I think you need a little bit more.
You do need to start thinking about your social out life as well. You need to start thinking about, if it, and that's a big one because you spend a lot of time with your coworkers. If you're
Yeah.
most people, I have a handful of clients who they all work together and they all did the same job and they traveled together and now they're all my clients. They're all retired and they're having a great time. But you think about what's that going to be like when you retire from your core friend group and when they start
Yeah.
retiring off, who are you going to fill that void with? Because we need socialization. We don't need to just live
Yeah.
under a rock by ourselves. But getting involved in activities outside of work, even before you're done working, tremendous way to start
Yep.
building social connections. I have a client who just retired. They moved to Tennessee. They bought a cabin that needed a tremendous amount of renovation. They spent years getting. I mean, they just did everything. Huge
Yeah.
overhaul. They moved up there, retired, and he's joining the volunteer fire department. And they're super getting involved and connecting with stuff in their community, and I think that's just a really good example of filling your time with a project that's going to keep you busy, and that keeps you happy and healthy and young. But
Yeah.
B, going ahead and saying, hey, I know that I need to replace some of those social connections, not replace them, but maintain social connections outside of myself.
Yeah.
And just being intentional about that, because it can be lonely retiring by yourself, and people don't
Yeah.
realize that void. I've even quit jobs before, and it's hard. I quit a job where I was in an office and I went to work by myself out on the road. And it was really tough being alone on the road for a
Yeah.
couple of years.
Yeah.
So just being intentional about building your own social network, I'd say is huge for people's mental health, right? And working
Yeah.
on that
Yeah.
before it's time is a great idea.
Yeah. Absolutely. You can find yourself wanting this freedom,
Yeah.
but if you don't have some version of a plan for it, that freedom can be very overwhelming and it can also be lonely. So I think that's a really good point. And you touched on the wellness side of it just a bit. I think the next one in line is health and wellness,
Yeah.
right? I
Oof.
mean,
Huge.
uh, obviously, right? I want to be healthy in retirement, but what are you actually going to do? Or what are
Yeah.
you doing now to start prepping for that? Because now you do have all that free time. And guess what? All the excuses you've been using,
Yeah.
they're gone.
Yeah.
They're gone, right?
Yeah.
What about that?
You sit down on that couch and crack open that beer and feel that weight off your shoulders. If you're not careful, you're never going to get up off that couch.
That's
And
right.
you see people's health decline quickly. They
Hmm.
retire. Sometimes early retirees really struggle with this, where they retire at 55, 60 years old, and they really slow down really fast, and it can cut years off your life, just
Yeah.
living a sedentary life. So if you're 5 years from retirement, and maybe you're really busy, but you're not proactively staying on top of your health, and I would say
Yeah.
especially staying active. My grandfather, my wife's grandfather, so my kid's great grandfather, we went skiing with him this year for his 80th birthday. You know how that's possible? The dude has been active his whole life.
Yeah.
He's still cutting down trees in his yard. He's still
Yeah.
fixing stuff up around the house. I mean, that's the kind of level of physical activity it takes to continue to stay healthy, to do things in your 70s
Yep.
and 80s. And
Yep.
so if you're not being proactive about keeping those joints working, they are going to by default just stop. So I'd say 5 years before your retirement, great time to make new resolutions, get back in the gym.
Yep. Yeah, and that's a great point of there's different ways to do it. You do not have to become a triathlete when you retire.
Thank goodness for
But
that.
if you right, but if your thing, like everybody has their own thing. If your thing, and I resonate with that story you just told because that's how I am. That's how my family is. That's how my dad is. Right. My dad's not going to the gym, but I can tell you what, he's going to work 12 hours out in the yard.
Yep.
And the things that he could use a machine for, he's going to use his hand. Like he's not doing it for health. It's the good byproduct. It's just because he's a bull.
Yeah.
But that keeps you healthy and active. If that's not your thing, if you like, I like paying the guy to come mow the grass and all that stuff, great. Figure out a different way. It could be
Yeah.
walking the golf course 2 days a week instead of riding the cart. Simple things.
Yeah.
Grab yourself a smartwatch, count your steps, and start there. It doesn't have to be turning into this high level athlete, but it does need to be moving your ass off the couch.
I had a client who I literally didn't recognize for one of his for well, that's not true if you're listening to this. I almost didn't recognize him when he came in for his first like spring review after he retired. So I hadn't seen him since like November. He came in March, and the dude lost like 40 pounds. And I
Yeah.
asked him, like, I was like, James, like, what's going on? You look great, but I mean, and it probably sounded as awkward as I just did, but
Yeah.
he's like, I
Yeah,
started
that
walking.
did.
He's like, I got a group of guys in my neighborhood. We walk 5 miles every morning through the whole neighborhood,
Simple.
and we all talk and we're buddies. I was like, and it was so cool to hear, like, he's being proactive about his health, building his social connections, and I
Yeah.
can tell you his happiness level was just through the roof compared
Well, that's
to
it. Yeah. That's it. And all these things are connected. Exercising, whether it is actually exercising or passively exercising by doing other activities, is a great way to kind of hit all those things. Like you said, I'm socially exercising.
yeah,
I'm like checking all these boxes on one thing just by taking a walk around the block with my buddies or by walking the golf course on Tuesdays rather than taking the cart. Like you can check a lot of these boxes all in one activity. So I think that's a great spot.
It's not a
Um,
bad idea too, 5 I know this is a little bit of a pivot, but 5 years before you're retiring, it's not a bad idea to start thinking about, like, where are you going to retire to, and being serious
yeah,
about that. Do you see people I
yeah,
mean, you're in Pennsylvania, so
yeah,
I'm in Georgia. I think y'all's weather's horrible, so no offense,
yeah. It
but
is.
Pennsylvania is
That's why
beautiful
we go
country.
to Florida. Yeah,
I've been there a few times, and it's pretty country. I like it, but so, like, do you think that's a good time to start thinking about, like, your geography in retirement and making moves there or what?
absolutely. Because it's going to impact the thing we're not talking about, which is the financial side.
Sure,
Right? Am I going to move, like actually pick up and move? And if so, is that area equal to, more than, or less than expensive? And how does that impact my financial plan? Or, which most of my clients do, am I going to stay here and snowbird?
sure,
And that's totally great too. But I build that in, that needs to be built into the plan. We need to
sure.
have funds available. We need to be able to access that money on a regular basis, because if that's your strategy, that's what you want to do,
Yep.
we can't just go year by year hoping that we can execute it. We need to plan for it. So I think where you're at and how you're going to do that is super important. And what I'm noticing again in PA, it's a lot of snowbirding, anywhere from a couple months to 6 and 6. And then the conversation is, do I rent there? Do I buy there? There's a whole episode just on snowbirding alone. But the other thing I'm starting to see a little bit of is where my adult children are.
Yeah,
Okay. So, like,
that's
we're
big.
retired now. I don't have to be here for my job. And Susie and her husband moved to South Carolina. That seems attractive to me now as soon as they start popping out grandbabies, right?
Yep.
Because there's nothing else here anchoring me. And so, where you're going to live and how you're going to do that, whether it's actually in one spot only or bouncing back and forth, is super important to start thinking about and planning for. And the one that I would love your perspective on, because you actually do it, and I've talked to some clients about, is the traveling side, and doing that in an RV, whether that's full time or part time.
No, I was gonna say, I was literally gonna say everybody who's getting ready to retire should seriously consider buying an RV and just doing that. We meet some of the coolest people. We do travel. Yeah, I'm that financial advisor who probably has at a new address every 2 weeks in my RV, and we meet some of the absolute coolest retirees. I met a guy from Michigan. We were in Hurricane, Utah, which is outside Zion National Park. Dude pulls in with like a 45-foot bus towing a 30-foot enclosed trailer that he has a Mini Cooper and a rock crawler in, and, like, that's like somebody who really thought through, "I know what I want
Yeah,
retirement to look like," right?
that's
Um,
right.
and they know what states they wanna go to and not, and they go see their kids and stuff, but, whatever your version of location is, great time to start thinking about it and putting pin to numbers, yes, but even more than just putting your pin to the numbers, thinking about, like, what would I actually truly enjoy? Because for some people, maybe the RV thing's not super appealing, but for a lot of folks, they're kind of scared of it, and they're like, "Man,
Yeah,
it seems really cool, but I don't know if I could do that." I'm like, "You should just go ahead and start testing it out now before you
yeah,
retire. Go ahead and buy an
that's
RV,
right.
take some long trips during the summer, and see if you like it or not. Because better to do it now and know when you get there if you're going to have fun or not."
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a good place to leave it for now. Just to recap: purpose, routine, social connections, health, health, health,
Yep.
health, health, and where you're going to live, how you're going to do it. I think you need to start thinking about those things and then match the money to them versus the other way around. I have this much money. Which one of these things can I get away with? I think
Yeah,
that's a great
absolutely.
way to start thinking about it, planning for it, talking to your spouse about it, because guess what? If you're not on the same page, a lot of surprises in the first year of retirement, right,
That never
Hamilton?
happens. That never
Yeah,
happens.
right. No,
All right,
I
good
think
talk,
that's
buddy. I love
I
it.
think that's a good list. All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
Yep.